Hotep family, welcome to part one of lesson number 16, Neturu. If you learned something from this lesson, please hit the like button. If you find this lesson valuable, please hit the share button. And if you'd like to learn more, please subscribe. The primary objective of this course is to be able to read the sacred script of our African ancestors, Medu Neter. Um, we are all students and teachers. We should always remember to Gemek Nefer, or look for the beauty, or find the beautiful, or know thyself. In part one of lesson 16, we will be reading sacred script that was written during the 18th dynasty. So here are the names of the first three Africans who represented the people of the Upper and Lower Nile Valley starting in 1555 before the Common Era. It also has the African woman who served as the first goddess of the 18th dynasty, or as they would call her, Nbt Ht. Her name was Amis Nefertari. This lesson focuses on Neferti, or two Neferets, carved on the sarcophagus of Sultan Kara Sarah Yehuti Mes. This sarcophagus, or casket as we call them now, was used to bury Nasubiti Kara, the grandfather of Nasubiti Ma'at Kara. The sarcophagus is currently in the Boston Museum. It was donated to the museum by Theodore M. Davis, a wealthy American lawyer. How he came into possession of it, we are not clear. At least I'm not clear. At each end, we have a female Neteret featured, one at the head of the casket and the other at the foot of the casket. So Africans along the Nile considered there to be female gods, and they call them Neteret, which we translate in English as goddess. There are no goddesses in the Hebrew, Muslim, or Christian religion. The transliterations we see here represent Aset on the left and Nbt Het on the right. We know that these are female goddesses because of the sacred symbols of Neter, the loaf of bread, and the egg, which is common to all female Neteru. On the head of Aset, we see the throne on which the man sits. It is pronounced Aset. And on the head of the next Neteret, we see the Neb symbol for Lord and the symbol Het, which stands for temple. So we have Aset on the left and Nbt Het on the right. We begin by reading the side of the casket with the Neteret Aset, who is kneeling on Nebu, which is the golden collar of beads, and with the Shanu, or symbol of eternity, beneath her hands. Note that this Shanu is circular, unlike the typical Shanu that we see names written in. At the bottom end of the casket, opposite Aset, we will examine the side that has Neteret Aset Nbt Het, who is also kneeling on the Nebu, with the Shanu symbol for eternity beneath her hand. We will begin by reading the sacred script inside of this Shanu. Again, this is kind of interesting because this Shanu has sacred script in it, and the Shanu for eternity has no script within it. So the first thing we see is the symbol, the walking stick and the cobra. And that's pronounced yet, and we translate that somehow as is spoken, is said, or pronounced. Next, we have the suit plant with the loaf of bread, the Egyptian bee with the loaf of bread, and we recognize that as Nasut Biti or Sutin Biti, which stands for the representative of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. We loosely call that Pharaoh. So next we have the basket and the two tongues of land. The basket is Neb, the two tongues of land is Taui, with the Ui representing duality. And so this is Neb Taui, or Lord of the two lands, that being Upper and Lower Egypt. And here we have again Neb and the I, which is Iri, and the loaf of bread below that makes it Irit. Uh, Below that and to the right of the eye, if you look carefully, that is a symbol Niut, or the determinative for a city or nome. So this is Lord of Arit. And the Shanu inside of the Shanu gives us the name of the Nasut Biti. And again, I use Dr. Ben's Black Leonard and Nile and his family as a reference. So we see that this is Nasut Biti A Keper Kara, or the great resurrection of the spirit of Ra. Here we have a finger, an arm, and a hand, and a mace. Next to that, there is a pupil of the eye, and a basket. Together, this seems to represent 1/4 of a measure of everything. Then we have the boat oar, the loaf of bread, and the basket. Uh, this is translated in English as the guide of everything, or in this case, the female guide of everything, because of the loaf of bread making this feminine, and Neb is Lord. And the last sacred symbol inside of this larger canoe is that of Aset, Necheret. So what we have is a canoe inside of a canoe, and it begins with the symbol of some sort of pronouncement, and it ends with the symbol for the Necheret Aset. Once we finish reading all of the text, we might be able to come with a better understanding of what our ancestors were trying to tell us. So at the foot of the casket, if we read this sacred script, we see that it is, in this case, written from left to right. And if you look carefully, it contains most of the same sacred script as the previous Shanu. So just like the previous Shanu, this Shanu begins with Yeti. So next we see the suit plant, which grows in the upper Nile Valley, and the bee, which is found in lower Nile Valley, and we see the loaf of bread beneath each of those, which gives us Sutin Biti or Nasut Biti. So following Nasut Biti, a representative of upper and lower Nile Valley, we have Neb Taui, Lord of the two lands. And then we have the same combination of sacred symbols as before. We have the Neb symbol, the eye, the loaf of bread, and it's a little challenging to recognize that this is the Newt symbol, but it cannot be the solar disk because of its position there. If it was solar disk, it would be at the end. So but we've seen this before. Emperor. So we kind of recognize that this is the Lord of Arit, of the realm of the nome of Arit. And again, inside of this Shanu, the inner Shanu, we see the name of the Nasut Biti. In this case, we see, again, that this is clearly Keper Kara, the great resurrection of the spirit of Ra. Here we have the stool, or sometimes it's called the door, and the riffle of water, which is pen, transliterated PN, and the neb symbol again below the pupil of the eye. So this again represents 1/4, but the pen would tell me that this is this 1/4. So this last group of sacred symbols requires a lot more study, because I'm looking at the pen as, again, being a preposition, and we now have the pupil and neb in front of Aset, and the pupil and neb in front of Nbt Het. So we have 1/4 Aset, 1/4 Nbt Het. So the 1/4 plus 1/4 is 1/2. And since I'm still at the kindergarten level of learning this, I cannot really speak on what this means, but hopefully one day I'll understand. Maybe one day we'll all understand. So what we can say is that there is some pronouncement being made at the head of the coffin and at the foot of the coffin, and it ends with the name of one Necheret at the head, the name Aset, and the name of two Necherets at the foot, but the representation is only of one Necheret. So we will have to continue and do more studying to figure out what the ancestors were telling us. There is much more to be read on the both ends of this sarcophagus. On this end, again at the head of the sarcophagus, we have 3 columns of text in front of Aset and 1 column uh, behind her. We will venture to read this material in part 2. And at first inspection, the text on the bottom of the sarcophagus is fairly similar to that at the head of the sarcophagus, but we will reserve our attempt at reading this to lesson 16, part 3. So I'm going to end part 1 at this point, and we will pick up with part 2 and read the text that is indicated from the head of the sarcophagus and from the foot of the sarcophagus. Meanwhile, if you did learn something, please hit the like button, and if you um, think there was something of value here, please share. And if you want to learn more, please subscribe. There are some previous lessons that you might be interested in. Shem Hotep.